Good evening, Americans, and welcome to the Ed Show from New York. It's International Women's Day, and Rush Limbaugh attacked another woman on his radio show today. The Republican war on women and women's health care has become part of their culture. This is the Ed Show. Let's get to work.
I really, truly think that the candidates that are out there today on the Republican side would take women back decades.
The war on women is raging in Arizona, Georgia, Virginia, Texas, and Illinois. 1,100 anti-women laws in the past year. The attack on women's health is not stopping, and neither is Rush Limbaugh.
It's an out-and-out lie, complete with your B.I.itchy opinion in it.
Tonight, Illinois Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky on the latest from Rush Limbaugh. Katrina Vanden Heuvel on the fight going on around the nation, and we'll also have two more lawmakers who are fighting anti-women legislation with laws targeting men's reproductive health. It is game on for the Obama campaign.
Do we look at the day's headlines, or do we remember what we as a country have been through?
Obama campaign press secretary Ben LaBolt is here with a sneak preview on the new Obama documentary. And Sean Hannity thinks he's found the smoking hug.
Now that hug in the President's Association with a radical professor like Bell is no doubt going to become a hot topic in coming days.
Right-wing conspiracy theorists fall flat on their face again. Gene Robinson is here with the latest. Good to have you with us tonight, folks. Thanks for watching. Today is International Women's Day. And guess how the Republicans in Congress celebrated the occasion? They debated a bill to restrict abortion rights for women. It's yet another bill criminalizing doctors who perform abortions. The 12 female Democrats in the Senate, well, they've had enough. In a letter to Speaker Boehner, they wrote, "It's time for you to put up an end to the attacks on women's health care and to work with the Senate to get back to the American people's top priority, creating jobs and boosting our economy." The war on women's health care is taking place really all over the country when you look at it, at every level of government. Last year, this is an astounding number. Last year, more than 1,100 reproductive health restrictions were introduced in all 50 states. Restrictions to abortion rights skyrocketed to record levels in 2011. 9 states, count them, 9 states voted to reduce funding for family planning programs. Texas reduced its reproductive health budget 66%. 6 states passed restrictions on family planning funds. New Hampshire prevented Planned Parenthood from receiving Title X funding. This goes back to 1970, Title X. Today in Atlanta, 8 women in the Georgia Senate walked out of the chamber in protest as Republicans passed restrictions on contraceptive funding and abortion services.
Here come the right-wing shock troops marching, 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 and women are on the bullseye target.
It's not just Democratic lawmakers who are fed up. New York State Assemblywoman Teresa Sayward is a Republican who is retiring from office this year.
I do not have a favorite in the presidential race. If I had to vote today, I'd vote for Obama.
Really?
Absolutely.
Wow. I think there are a number of people in your party who would be surprised to hear that. Why?
Because I really, truly think that the candidates that are out there today on the Republican side would take women back decades.
Female lawmakers and voters are revolting against the anti-woman legislation across the country. Meanwhile, the biggest anti-woman voice in America continues to attack. Rush Limbaugh was back at it again today. This is how he characterized a female Washington Post humor columnist today.
Ms. Petrie, I don't know who feeds you your information. I have a pretty good guess. But you might want to double check here because you've written something that's patently false. It's an out-and-out lie, complete with your B.I.itchy opinion in it. And it is untrue.
Well, the guy just can't help himself. Rush can't hide his negative attitude towards women. He also can't hide the trouble his show is facing as of late. This is what you heard today if you were listening to the Rush Limbaugh radio show in the largest media market in the country.
We've barely scratched the surface here on the EIB network today, folks. Sit tight. The fastest 3 hours in media roll on right after this.
That would be dead air. Rush claims his sponsors have not run away, but silence speaks louder than words, doesn't it? On WABC New York web stream, the show had a total of 5 minutes and 33 seconds of dead air where commercials are supposed to be. Of the 86 ads during the broadcast, 77 of them were unpaid public service announcements donated by the Ad Council. Now, the American Heart Association has asked for their PSAs to be pulled from the Limbaugh radio show immediately. Today, Congressman Tim Ryan of Ohio introduced a bill to get Limbaugh off the Armed Services Radio Network, which of course plays to our troops. Right-wingers are still trying to excuse Limbaugh for his actions. They are calling for a Bill Maher to be punished for offensive comments against women, and they want the Obama-supporting super PAC to return Bill Maher's $1 million donation. Bill Burton of Priorities USA said the comparison is wrong.
The notion that there is an equivalence between what a comedian has said over the course of his career and what the de facto leader of the Republican Party said to sexually degrade a woman who engaged in an important debate of our time is crazy. Like, there is just no similarity between what Rush Limbaugh said, lying about the argument that Ms. Fluke was making, a law student at Georgetown, and what a comedian has said in the past.
The Republican war on women's health care, well, it has no comparison. It is happening at the federal, the state, and the local level. And it's shocking to a lot of people. And it is supported by the loudest voices in the right-wing media across America. We are going back to the 1970s, 60s, maybe 50s. And it is amazing to me how the Republican candidates on the campaign trail continue to dodge the question about what do they have for women voters in this country. Get your cell phones out. I want to know what you think. Back to radio for a moment. Tonight's question: would you rather listen to dead air or Rush Limbaugh? Text A for dead air, text B for Rush Limbaugh to 622-639. You can always go to our blog at ed.msnbc.com. We've got the results coming up later on in the program. Joining me tonight is Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky of Illinois. Congresswoman, great to have you with us. When you look at the number of bills that are being introduced at a state level and you see what your colleagues on the other side of the aisle are talking about, where their focus is, what's happening here?
Well, you know, and 135 of those bills actually were passed into law last year, about 70% of them to limit a woman's right to an abortion. So, you know, happy International Women's Day. The Republicans are celebrating by doubling down on their war on women. It's just remarkable. But you know what, Ed? 60%, over 60% of voters are against the Blunt Amendment, the one that said that an employer could deny a woman, actually anyone, something that went a health service that went against his moral judgment or his religious beliefs, and that's also true of the majority of independents, and even 40% of the Republicans don't agree with that.
Congresswoman, do you think that this is somewhat of a surrender to President Obama, in that deep down they don't think that they can beat President Obama, so they're going to do everything they can to rally the social conservatives and at least get some more people in the Congress and in the Senate and in the House that will see the world the way they do, that they're going to get something out of this election, and this is the strongest push they've ever made when it comes to attacking abortion rights?
Well, if that's their strategy, it's pretty ignorant, because it's talking about trimming down the Republican Party to the lowest number possible, because this is so far out of the mainstream that if they actually think that somehow ginning up those people that think it's a smart idea to go after women, the majority of voters, after all, it's ridiculous.
On the other hand, is this an opportunity for the Democrats politically? I mean, it would seem to me, as you just heard the Assemblywoman from New York, she said if she was going to vote right now, she'd vote for President Obama, and she's a Republican. Do you think there'll be a lot of people like that?
I do. I think in suburban America that Republican women are going to not want to vote for a Republican who stands for taking away women's rights. I think that women everywhere are going to respond to this. You know, we're not going to go back, Ed.
Yeah.
That's simply not going to happen.
And some of the right wing are saying that Democrats are not doing enough to denounce comments made by liberal commentators about women. How do you respond to that? You were somewhat hounded yesterday by someone with a camera who wanted you to respond. How do you feel about that?
You know, look, I'm not going to condone any kind of name-calling, but that's not what Rush Limbaugh is simply doing. He is going after women for standing up for their rights to and access to contraception, going after a young, brave woman who went to testify, not a public figure, who stood up to declare the rights of women and her friends. No, this is not just about a name. This is about a policy. This is about an attack on women's rights.
Congresswoman from Illinois, Jan Schakowsky, great to have you with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Now let's turn to Katrina Vanden Heuvel, editor, part owner, Nation magazine. I want to play this clip from Bill O'Reilly. He said this today about women's contraception being available through Title X funding. Here it is.
It's in motion now that if you need birth control and you go to a federal clinic, you get it. Yes. That's under Title X of the Public Health Act, all right? So there really isn't any problem. You can get it.
Katrina, what's wrong with that?
Well, first of all, the 4 Republican candidates running for president want to eliminate Title X. Title X is mostly used, Ed, for cervical breast cancer screening, for HIV and other sexually transmitted diseases.
For low-income women.
For low-income women.
Yeah.
So we're witnessing an attempt to roll back a program that has provided access to health care for low-income women in this country. And the Congressional Research Service a year ago estimated that if you did away with Title X, a program, Ed, by the way, created with the support of Republican President Richard Nixon and senior George Bush as a congressman.
Since 1970.
Since 1970. This is the bulwark. This is the ballast that has helped low-income women. It's crazy to me that in this year we are having a debate about contraception, an issue which should have been resolved, but also we're witnessing a targeting of not only women, but low-income women in an attempt to roll back access to health care.
What do you make of the number? I was told 1,100 bills on states across the country. I was astounded at that number.
This has been, you know, what we're seeing now is a conversation this country has needed to have. Unfortunately, it's happening with terrible GOP overreach, with a party that wants to roll back time and roll back women's access to health care. But this has been going on.
Will they pay a price for it politically?
They will pay a price because the framing war, so to speak, shows that a majority of people, not just women, a majority of people see this as about women's health, not religious liberty, and they see the Republicans as freedom limiters. And I think we're seeing a backlash among women, and you see it among the Lisa Murkowski, the Republican senator from Alaska.
She voted for the Blunt Amendment.
But she then repented. But you're seeing, listen, even Republican women use birth control. So you're seeing moderate and independent Republican women. You could see it in the primaries this past week, where you saw the gender gap for Rick Santorum, who has been flogging this so hard.
I mean, the Blunt Amendment was on the transportation bill. So was the post office. It is amazing what they're doing. I want to play more. Here's more of O'Reilly today, and I want your reaction.
The Centers for Disease Control basically categorize things, and they say this is a malady, this is a medical condition, and this isn't. And so Viagra comes under the government's guidelines for medical condition. Of course. Contraception doesn't.
How can he defend this double standard?
You know, until now, I didn't know Bill O'Reilly had standards. He now, I see, has double standards. You know, we've heard this BS before. Contraception is central to women's health and their ability to be part of an economy, to control their family's welfare. It is a terrible double standard, but one that comes, Ed, from men dominating a political process. And I think it's important now, this is a pivotal moment for women to take back their power. And I understand there are many different kinds of women in this country. Low-income women, by the way, don't get heard much from. Yeah. But those 8 women walking out in Georgia, in the state Senate, state legislature, we're going to see a lot more of that, because this, again, is going to be women's historic year, as 1992 was, when Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill had their square off, and the Republican and Democratic men on the Judiciary Committee didn't stand up for women's rights broadly. Instead of having this discussion, and I wish we were having a discussion about some of the real problems and priorities in this country. That would include women's economic justice and advancement, and that's linked to this. That's linked to this.
Yes, it is. And 98% of Republicans in the House voted against the Lilly Ledbetter bill. It's just amazing. Katrina, great to have you with us tonight. Thank you so much.